I want to show you the function in Google Sheets called query, and this is a function you may not be familiar with if you're only using Excel formulas or functions, because it's not in Excel. But if you're familiar with writing SQL, this is a awesome tool that you can use when you're working in Google Sheets. So you can build some pretty cool spreadsheets using this query, and let me show you what it does. So I have over here, this is my a vehicle maintenance schedule. Okay, so I have the services here and when those services need to be completed on a schedule, whether it's weekly, monthly, or quarterly, right there. And over here on the right, I have pretty much that same list. You can see that here that I have highlighted. So it's pretty much the same list. But the difference is this list that I have highlighted right now is being generated by a query. So you can see up here on the top, I have a formula written in my formula bar right here. So, and I'm using the function query. So if I click right up in this upper top leftmost cell, okay, you can see that's where my query is written. And basically what it's doing is it's pulling out data from my list over here, okay, from this table that I have over here. And right now it doesn't look like much, so if you're not familiar with querying data, it may not look like much, but I just want to show you one of the things you can do to make this powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in. Right now I had removed out my where clause, or I had removed out basically my filter, and I just went ahead and stuck in a filter that is filtering the due date right here. It's filtering the due date based on whether or not the service is due. So I go ahead and hit enter, and now my query updates, so it only gives me data of things that are due. And since none of these things are due, nothing is showing up. But if I come over here and let's say I kind of hypothetically, I'll mess with these dates to show you how it works. I'll do 10/2/2016 was the last time it was completed. And I have some functions in here already that kind of calculate the due date. So my due date changes, but as you may have already noticed, notice check tire pressure shows up here. So if I take this date and I'll paste it in just a few of these others, notice as I'm pasting this, notice as I pasted this, everything else was showing up here in my query. So it's like a filter, but it's on a separate list. But it's more than that too. You're able to query data, so you're able to create really intense filters. If you're not familiar with querying data, you can look it up. A lot of times, one way to look it up is if you look up SQL, or um, standard query language, is I think what it stands for. Essentially, that's a query language that's used that's a lot more common than the language I'm using here. But it's very similar to Google Google's query language using Sheets, which is actually this query language, Google's visualization API query language is what it's called. So anyway, that's how you can create a query, or that's what a query can do. To create it, it's really pretty simple. So I'll break down this formula up here. I've got it actually up here without the equal sign, so it kind of breaks it down. So we have query, and then the first component, which is the sheet 1 exclamation point C2 through E27, that's listing my data. So if I click on here and click up in my formula, this orange highlighted area, this is the data I'm pulling from. Okay, and then I typed a comma, and then the green section right here in my formula. So you can see this green section right here. This is that's my actual query. So that's the code, I guess you could say, of what I want to select. And in this case, we just have select everything, which that's what that wildcard means, is and that's what that little asterisk right there, that just means everything. So we're going to say select everything where, and this is kind of my filter, is the where, column 3 is less than in the to date now. In other words, today, right now, on my computer. So basically, it's looking at all these dates right here, and it's saying, give me everything on this list where the column 3, or this third column right here, is less than right now. In other words, it's due, right? Um, And then finally, I have, you can see this last little thing, I have a comma and then a 1. That comma 1 represents how many rows I want to represent my header. So since I only have one row of headers, this service, last service, and due date, that's my header right there. Since I only want that one row, I'm just going to type 1. If I were to type 2 here, you can see what happens. So now it's actually plugging in service check oil level, because it's service check oil level. It's combining those two as a header. So that's not what I want. But this query function, if you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to get familiar with it. It can introduce you to a new skill of pulling data, and it's an easy way you can do it on any computer without having to be connected to a database or anything like that. And it can really enhance your spreadsheets.